Hello students, welcome to the session. I am CA Dhanush Gangwani, who has been teaching students in Bangalore, Pondicherry and Chennai. In this particular session, I will be discussing mock test paper 2 for our June 2021 exams. Mock test paper 1 has been discussed in the previous video, which is a part of this playlist. Like I informed you in the first video as well, I hope you students have answered the paper assuming that you are in the exam hall, keeping a time limit of 3 hours. If you have not answered the paper, I strongly recommend to pause this video now, make a fair attempt, and then resume watching this video and evaluate your answers. Let us get straight to it. Question number 1A. State with reasons whether the following statements are true or false. Most of the students answer whether it is true or false, but they forget that we have to state with reason. First one, salary paid in advance is not an expense because it neither reduces assets nor increases liabilities. We are trying to see the classification of salary paid in advance. Salary paid in advance relates to the next accounting period. It has nothing to do with the current accounting period. Hence, it is not taken in the profit and loss account as an expense. It is shown as a current asset in the balance sheet. What do we take under the profit and loss account? We take only current year income and expense into my profit and loss account. Salary paid in advance belongs to the next year. It is a prepaid expense. It will be shown under the current asset side of your balance sheet. Statement 2. Reducing balance method of depreciation is followed to have a uniform charge for depreciation and repairs and maintenance together. They are trying to say that the total expense of depreciation and repairs together more or less remains the same throughout the life of the asset. Let us consider an example to understand this. I have taken an example where the cost of the asset is 100 rupees. My WDV rate of depreciation is 10%. If I need to calculate depreciation for year 1, I will say 100 into 10%, which is equal to 10 rupees. The second year, my WDV of the asset has come down to 90. So I will say 90 into 10%, which is 9 rupees. In the third year, my WDV has come down to 81. My depreciation on 81 into 10% is going to be 8.1 rupees. Now, in year 1, the asset is more or less new and you are not going to have any repairs. So let us assume that the repairs in year 1 is 0. In year 2, you might have some minor repairs. Let us assume that there is 1 rupee of repairs. In year 3, your repairs are going to increase. So let me assume that there are 2 rupees of repairs and so on. So here what we are seeing is your depreciation reduces each year and your repairs increases each year. So can I say the overall total expense, if you see in year 1, how much is it? In year 1, depreciation plus repairs is coming to 10 rupees. In year 2, 9 plus 1, which is coming to 10 rupees. In year 3, 8.1 plus 2, which is coming up to 10.1 rupees. So it is more or less similar itself. So that is what they are trying to ask in the question. Let us look into the solution. In the early periods of useful life of fixed assets, repairs and maintenance expense are relatively low because the asset is new. Whereas in the later periods, as the asset becomes old, repairs and maintenance increase continuously. Under written down value method, depreciation is charged high in the initial period and decreases continuously in the later periods. Thus, depreciation and repairs and maintenance become more or less uniform throughout the useful life of the asset. Therefore, this statement is true. Coming to statement number 3. The financial statements must disclose all reliable and relevant information in accordance with full disclosure principle. Full disclosure says that all the information or all the transactions that have happened during a particular year should be disclosed in your financial statements to the users of accounts. True, sir. The financial statements must disclose all the reliable and relevant information in accordance with the full disclosure principle. Statement number 4. When there is no agreement between the partners, the profit or loss of the firm will be shared in their capital ratio. Now, an agreement is the basic requirement for a particular partnership firm, but assuming that there is no agreement, then what is the partnership firm going to follow? They are going to follow the Partnership Act. So in the absence of an agreement, what are the rules to be followed? 1. No salary or remuneration will be given to any partner. 2. No interest on capital will be given to any partner. 3. No interest on drawings can be charged for any partner. Point number 4, interest on loan will be given at 6% per annum. And point number 5 speaks about profit sharing ratio, which is going to be equal. Here they say capital ratio, hence the statement is false. False. According to the Indian Partnership Act, in the absence of any agreement to the contrary, profit and losses of the firm are shared equally among partners. It is not in the capital ratio, hence this statement is false. Statement number 5. Debenture interest is payable after the payment of preference dividend but before the payment of equity dividend. Debenture interest is payable to debenture holders who have given a loan to the company. Dividend is payable to shareholders who are owners of the company. Will we pay debenture interest first or will we pay dividend first? Debenture interest is a charge on profit. Dividend is an appropriation of profit. First, we are going to pay debenture interest. So this particular statement is false. Debenture interest is payable before the payment of any dividend, whether it is equity or preference. Statement number 6. Net income in cases of persons practicing vocation is determined by preparing profit and loss account. What do you mean by vocation? It is an activity which requires proper training. Example, doctor. Will a doctor prepare profit and loss account to know his net income? No. A doctor prepares income and expenditure account. False. Net income is determined by preparing income and expenditure account in case of persons practicing vocation. Question number 2b. Change in accounting policy may have material effect on the items of financial statements. Explain the statement with the help of an example. Now we are changing an accounting policy. Can you give me an example? 1. Change in the method of depreciation. 2. Change in the method of valuation of closing stock. This is going to have a material effect on financial statements. Sir, how, sir? Okay. Suppose I was following straight line method of depreciation every year. Can I say my depreciation every year is going to be the same? Yes. Let us assume that the asset was 100 rupees, and if the life is 10 years, 10 rupees will be your depreciation every year. And suppose you change from straight line method to written down value method, now your depreciation in the further years is not going to remain 10 rupees. It will be 9, 8.1, etc. depending on your written down value. But as a user, if I do not know that you have changed your accounting policy, what will I assume? I might assume that your fixed assets have reduced. That's why your depreciation is reducing. So, but it is actually not the case. It is actually a case of change in accounting policy. So this is going to have a material effect on the financial statements, which should be quantified and mentioned, and then only it is going to be understandable to the users. Okay, sir. What about change in method of valuation, sir? As per FIFO method, if I value, suppose it comes to X amount. As per weighted average method, if I value, it comes to Y amount. So what method you are valuing, if you are going to change it, it was going to have an effect on your financial statements. Let us look into the answer. Change in accounting policy may have material effect on the items in the financial statements. For example, cost formula used for inventory valuation, if changed from weighted average to FIFO, unless the effect of such change in accounting policy is quantified, the financial statements may not help the users of accounts. So you need to give the quantification of the change in the accounting policy for the users to understand whatever has been changed. Okay, sir. Let us come to question number 1C. A plant and machinery costing rupees 40 lakh is depreciated on straight line basis, assuming 10-year working life and zero residual value for 4 years. At the end of 4th year, the machinery was revalued upwards by rupees 1,60,000. The remaining useful life was reassessed at 8 years. Calculate depreciation for the 5th year. This particular question is testing on revaluation of fixed asset and change in life of the fixed asset, change in useful life of the fixed asset. What happens in such a case? Sir, my unamortized amount or the amount which is not yet depreciated will be depreciated over the remaining useful life of the asset. For the first 4 years, they are following straight line method on the value of the asset, on the original cost of the asset, which is 40 lakh. So what will be my depreciation for first 4 years? I'm going to say it is going to be 40 lakh minus 0 because the scrap value is 0 divided by 10, which is equal to how much? Rupees 4 lakhs per year per annum. Okay, this is followed for 4 years. So now what is going to be the value of the asset after 4 years? I'm going to say it is going to be 40 minus 4 into 4. How much does that come up to? 40 minus 16 comes up to 24 lakhs. So now, sir, in the 5th year, the value of the asset is 24 lakhs. Can I consider 24 lakhs for the remaining 8 years? No. Before considering that, there is a revaluation upwards for 1,60,000. So 24 lakh plus 1,60,000 will be divided over the life of 8 years, giving a depreciation of 3,20,000 per year. Let us look into the solution. Like I said, depreciation charged for the first 4 years comes to, just a moment. Depreciation charge for the first 4 years come to 40 lakh minus 0 divided by 10, which is 4 lakh rupees. Your WDV at the end of 4th year is 40 lakh minus 4 lakh into 4, which is equal to 24 lakh. Now you are revaluing upwards. So I make an addition of 1,60,000, giving the value of the asset in the books at 25,60,000. My remaining useful life is assessed to be 8 years. Therefore, 25,60,000 divided by 8, 3,20,000 is my depreciation from year 5 onwards. Up to year 4, it was 4 lakh per annum. Year 5 onwards, it is going to be 3,20,000 per annum. This question was testing us on revaluation of fixed asset and change in useful life of the fixed asset. Let us look into question number 2. The following mistakes were located in the books of a concern after its books were closed and a suspense account was opened in order to get the trial balance agreed. So this particular question is dealing with rectification of errors. Okay, sir. What are the stages of rectification of errors, sir? Whenever I identify the error, that time I'm going to rectify, sir. So when can I identify an error in the books? 1, before preparation of trial balance. 2, after preparation of trial balance, but before preparing financial statements. 3, after preparation of financial statements. What is the case here? Here they say after the books were closed. That means, can I say financial statements have already been prepared? Yes, sir. This is your stage 3 of rectification. What should be kept in mind for stage 3 of rectification of errors? Sir, instead of any nominal account, we use the word, or we use the account profit, and we use the profit and loss adjustment account for the rectification. Why, sir? Because nominal accounts are transferred to the profit and loss account every year, they will not be carried forward to the next year. Now we are identifying these errors in the next year. So if any error is pertaining to a nominal account, the account has already been closed. So where will I rectify it? Now I will rectify it in the profit and loss adjustment account. Let me go through the errors. The first error, a bill receivable for 1,550 was posted through bills payable book. The bill was given by Mr. Ram. Now, whenever we have an error to be rectified, what are the steps that we are going to see? Step number 1, what is the correct entry for the particular transaction? Step number 2, check what has wrongly been recorded in your books of account. Step number 3, compare your correct entry with the wrong entry and give your rectification. Now, but this particular error is a bill receivable which has been recorded in bills payable book. Let us look into the solution. I'm going to say this is solution to question 2A. And this is the first one. Sir, what is the correct entry for this particular transaction? It is a bill receivable. So I'm going to say bill receivable to Ram, 1,550, 1,550. But they have recorded in the bills payable book. So the journal entry that they have recorded will be Ram account debtor to bill payable. Ram account debtor to bill payable, 1,550, 1,550. Now, what is the rectification if you compare these two entries? Sir, bills receivable was supposed to be debited. It is not debited. It is under debited, sir. So what am I going to do? I'm going to debit bill receivable account. Bills payable account should not be credited. It is credited. It is over credited, sir. So what am I supposed to do? I'm going to debit bills payable account. So let me give my rectification entry. Bills receivable account debtor, bills payable account debtor, 1,550, 1,550. Now what is happening to Ram account? Ram account should be credited with 1,550. It is not credited. So under credit, Ram account should not be debited, but they have debited 1,550. So I'm going to say over debit, sir. So now what are we supposed to do? So first we are supposed to cancel the over debit And second, we are supposed to record the under credit. So I will say to Ram account 3,100, the double amount. Why? One to cancel the wrong effect and one to record the right effect. Let me look into the solution now. The solution says bills receivable account debtor 1,550, bills payable account debtor 1,550, to Ram account 3,100. I hope you have understood the error. Sir, whenever they give you journal entries for rectification, please also give a narration in your exams. Error number 2. Cash received from Manan was debited to Tapan account. You have received cash from Manan, but you have debited Tapan's account. Let us see what is supposed to happen. This is question number 2A, error number 2. What is the transaction? The correct entry for the transaction is cash received from Manan. So can I say cash to Manan? Yes, but what have they done? They have recorded a Tapan, they have recorded a debit in Tapan account. So I will say Tapan debtor, cash debtor. Sir, they have not credited any account, sir. So automatically what happens? It is safe to assume that suspense account will be credited. Now, if this is my correct entry and wrong entry, tell me what is the rectification supposed to be? The rectification is going to be suspense account debtor to Manan account to Tapan account. Let me look into the suggested answers. Suspense account debtor 15,000, to Manan account 7,500, to Tapan account 7,500. Coming to error number 3. General expense of rupees 2,600 was posted in the general ledger as 6,200. So they have overcast in your general ledger. Okay, now let us see what is going to happen. This is question number 2A, error number 3 that I am discussing. What is the correct entry? The correct entry is going to be general expense account to cash. What is the value? The value is 2,600. But what has happened? They have recorded in general ledger, they have recorded in general expense ledger as rupees 6,200. So sir, 6,200 has been debited on the general ledger, and to cash I am going to take 2,600. Please note that the error has been only done in general expense account. Do not also take an error in cash account. Okay, now what is going to happen to the balancing figure? Automatically the balance is under suspense. What is the difference? 6,200 minus 2,600, 3,600 will be under suspense account. So tell me what is the rectification entry now? The rectification entry is supposed to be suspense account debtor to general expense account 3,600, 3,600. But in this particular question, they tell us that the financial statements are already prepared. So now what is supposed to be kept in mind? If there is any nominal account in my rectification entry, I am going to use P&L adjustment account. General expense is a nominal account. So instead of writing general expense account, I will use P&L adjustment account. Okay, sir. So my rectification entry suspense to P&L adjustment 3,600. Let us look into the suggested answer. Error number 3, suspense to P&L adjustment 3,600, 3,600. Coming to the fourth error, sales daybook was overcast by 5,000 rupees. Sales normally has a credit balance. It has been over credited by 5,000. So what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to debit sales account. Sales account is a nominal account. I cannot use sales account. I will use P&L adjustment account. So what is the rectification entry for error number 4? I am going to say P&L adjustment account debtor to suspense account 5,000, 5,000 being overcasting error in the sales account rectified. Sales account had been over credited. You were supposed to debit sales account, but instead of debiting sales account, we are debiting P&L adjustment account because it is a nominal account. Coming to the fifth one, legal expense of rupees 7,670 paid to Mr. Gupta was debited to her personal account. You have paid legal expenses. Correct entry, legal expense to cash. They have debited to Gupta's account. Gupta to cash. Now what is the rectification entry? Legal expense to Gupta. Legal expense nominal account. So you will say P&L expense to Gupta. Error number 5, P&L expense account debtor, P&L adjustment account debtor 7,670 to Gupta account 7,670. Coming to error number 6, a sale of rupees 25,000 to Tina was wrongly debited to the account of Hina. You have sold goods to Tina, they have debited the account of Hina. So tell me now, what is the correct entry? Sold goods to Tina, Tina to sales, they have debited Hina, Hina to sales. What is the rectification? Tina to Hina 25,000. Error number 6, Tina to Hina 25,000. Okay, sir. Let me come to error number 7. Error number 7. While carrying forward the total of one page of the purchase book to the next, the amount of rupees 1,690 was written as 1,960. Purchase account normally has debit balance. Debit balance of 1,690 is written as 1,960. So what is happening? Can I say they have over totaled or over debited purchase account? Now what am I supposed to do? I am supposed to credit purchase account, but purchase account is a nominal account. So what will I credit? I will credit my P&L adjustment account. Error number 7, suspense account debtor to P&L adjustment account 270. What is this 270 rupees? It is nothing but the difference. How much amount has been overcast, which is nothing but 1960 minus 1690. Coming to the last one, sir. Rupees 7,000 due to Mr. Somdev was omitted to be taken into trial balance. Now tell me, 7,000 due to Somdev, that means is he a debtor or a creditor? He is a creditor. But sir, ICI has wrongly printed the solution as a debtor. So either if you are using that solution, then you are supposed to consider 7,000 due by Somdev. But if you are considering the answer as a creditor, then it will be to Somdev. So because there is a misprint, you can assume either the question is right or the answer is right. I have taken Somdev as creditor, and because it's a creditor, I would have credited his, because he is a liability, I have credited his account. Suspense account debtor to Somdev account 7,000. This particular question not only asked us for the rectification, but they also told us find out the nature of the amount of suspense account. Now, how do I find out the nature of suspense account? I need to prepare the suspense ledger. In all my entries, I will see wherever suspense account is there, and I will do the posting in the ledger. Once I do the posting, I'm going to get a balancing figure. Now tell me, what is this balancing figure supposed to be? Sir, this balancing figure is nothing but the amount which came from the trial balance. Sir, when your trial balance did not match, in your trial balance, when total debit was not equal to total credit, what did you do? You put the difference under suspense account. So that difference was 20,870 rupees. Now we have done all the rectifications and my suspense account has closed. Please do not say that this is my closing balance of suspense. Let me carry forward it to the next accounting period. No, this was your opening balance of suspense from your trial balance. Now we have done all the rectifications and my closing balance becomes 0. I hope this clears question number 2A. Coming to question 2B. On 30th September 2020, the bank account of Mr. Samir, according to the bank column of cash book, was overdrawn to the extent of 16,248. On the same day, the bank statement, which is nothing but your passbook, showed a credit balance of 83,032 in the favor of Samir. Now your cash book and passbook are showing different balances. An examination of the cash book and bank statement revealed the following. I'm not going to see the observations. Let us see what is required from the question. You are required to show appropriate rectifications required in the cash book of Mr. Samir. That means they're asking you to prepare adjusted cash book and to prepare bank reconciliation statement as on that date. One, they want your adjusted cash book, and two, they want bank reconciliation statement. Tell me what kind of transactions are recorded in this particular adjusted cash book. Sir, if I am preparing my adjusted cash book, what are the kinds of transactions that I am going to record? In the adjusted cash book, I record transactions in my adjusted cash book. What are the transactions that I'm supposed to record? Can I record all transactions which cause a difference between cash book, passbook in the adjusted cash book? No, there are only certain transactions. What are those transactions? something which has not been recorded in the cash book. Previously, you have not recorded in the cash book, sir. Okay, now let us record. Or I'm going to say rectification of errors in the cash book. These are the items which will come in my adjusted cash book. So, sir, indirectly, can I say something which was not going to come in my adjusted cash book? What are those items, sir? Something that is not recorded in passbook. It is causing a difference between cash book and passbook because it is not recorded in the passbook. I will not record in my adjusted cash book, sir. Or the second kind of thing is error in the passbook. This is again not going to come in my adjusted cash book. Again repeating, what will come in the adjusted cash book? Entries not recorded in the cash book or rectification of errors made in your cash book. Now let me go and see the observations in this particular question. First one, a check of rupees 52,56,000 deposited on 29 September 2020 was credited by the bank only on 3rd October. Have you recorded this transaction when you deposited a check? Yes. So will this transaction come in the adjusted cash book? No. It is going to come in your bank reconciliation statement. Adjustment number 2. A payment by check for rupees 64,000 has been entered twice in the cash book. Okay, now am I supposed to rectify this? Yes, I have made an error of recording a payment twice in the cash book. Now let me record this or let me rectify this particular error. Yes, I am recording this in my adjusted cash book. Now, when I prepare adjusted cash book, tell me how am I going to record the transactions? On the debit side, I will record transactions which increase my bank balance. On the credit side, I'm going to record transactions which decrease my bank balance. Now, I have recorded a payment twice. So if I cancel the payment, can I say my bank balance is going to increase? Yes. Transaction number 2 will be recorded on the debit side. Next, on 29th September 2020, the bank credited an amount of 4,69,600 received from a customer of Samir, but the advice was not received by Samir until 1st October. When did the customer deposit money in Samir's account? 29 September. But the bank sent a notice or an advice to Samir only on 1st October. So has Samir recorded this 469,600 in his cash book? No. Now, can I record in the adjusted cash book? Yes. It is a transaction not previously recorded. So I'm supposed to record, is the balance going up or is the balance going down? Somebody has deposited money into your bank account. So balance is going up. Therefore, your account will be debited. Point number 4, bank charges amounting to rupees 2,320 not entered in the cash book. So the passbook has recorded a bank charge of rupees 2,320. Will you record in your adjusted cash book? Yes, sir. Will you record on the debit side or credit side? Bank charges reduces your balance. So I will record on the credit side. Observation number 5. On 6th September 2020, the bank credited 80,000 into Samir's account in error. So 80,000 was credited into Samir's account by an error made in the bank. Will you record this in your adjusted cash book? No. The error has to be rectified in the passbook. Can you rectify the passbook? No. So you will leave it as a difference and it is going to come in your bank reconciliation statement. Later on, the passbook will be rectified by the bank. Point number 6. A bill of exchange for rupees 5,60,000 was discounted by Samir with his bank. This bill was dishonored on 28th September, but no entry was made in the books of Samir. Now, when you have discounted a bill with the bank, what is going to happen on the maturity date? On the maturity date, the drawee is going to directly make a payment to the bank. Yes, but now what if the bill is dishonored? The bank is going to take money from the person who has discounted the bill of exchange. So here, when the bill of exchange was discounted, the money has been taken from Samir's account. So has this transaction been recorded in my cash book? No. Will it come in adjusted cash book? Yes. Debit side or credit side? Bank balance is decreasing. Therefore, it is going to come on the credit side. I'm sorry, this is the 6th point. The 6th point is coming on the credit side, which is relating to the bill of exchange discounted, dishonored. Point number 7, check issued up to 30th September, not yet presented for payment, total to rupees 53,04,000. You have issued checks to your suppliers. They have not gone to the bank and presented the checks for payment. So the transaction has not been entered in your passbook. Will you record this in adjusted cash book? No, you have already recorded. So this will come in your bank reconciliation statement. So point number 1, 5 and 7 have not been recorded. It will form part of BRS. The other 2, 3, 4 and 6 have been recorded, sir. 2 and 3 on the debit side, 4 and 6 on the credit side. Let me just see the suggested answer to show you the presentation. Please remember, whenever you're preparing adjusted cash book, you will start with your opening balance. Here the opening balance is an overdrawn balance of 16,248. Overdrawn balance in cash book means credit balance, overdraft balance, unfavorable balance. Yes, sir. So entry answer number 2B, we have started by balance brought down 16,248, and like I told you, 64,000 and 4,69,600 have come on the debit side. Bank charges and 5,60,000, which was relating to bill discounted dishonored, has come on the credit side. Now what happens, sir? How do I close the cash book? Automatic balancing figure, sir. So balancing figure will be recorded on whichever side is lower. 44,968 is now my balance as per cash book, but still it is not matching the passbook. What is the passbook showing? Passbook is showing 83,032. You can see here, passbook is showing 83,032. Still it is not matching. Why? Because of point number 1, 5 and 7. Now 1, 5 and 7 will be recorded in BRS and your transaction should match. Let us see, sir. Now, sir, we have two options. Either you can start from cash book and reach passbook, or you can start from passbook and reach cash book. I have taken cash book as the starting point. You could take alternatively, no problem. My starting point as per the cash book is overdraft balance. Let us look into the transactions. A check of rupees 52,56,000 deposited was credited by the bank on 3rd. So check deposited, not cleared. First question you ask yourself, where is this transaction recorded? Is it recorded in the cash book or is it recorded in the passbook? You have deposited a check, that means you have made an entry in your cash book. Second question, does the balance go up or does the balance go down? When you have deposited a check, your balance is going to go up. Now cash book is sitting up, passbook is sitting down. What is the starting point in our question? The starting point in our question is cash book. How do I reach passbook? I am supposed to deduct, but here I'm going to add. Why, sir? Normally I would have deducted, but because this is overdraft balance, I'm going to add. So you can see the bank reconciliation statement prepared as on 30th September. We have started with the credit or overdraft balance as per cash book, which is nothing but 44,968. And I have said add checks deposited not credited 52,56,000. Coming to the other two adjustments, adjustment number 5. The bank credited rupees 80,000 to Samir's account in error. First question, where is this transaction recorded, cash book or passbook? The bank has credited, sir, credited the account. So can I say this transaction will be in my passbook? Yes, sir. Bank has credited the account, going up or going down? So going down. Sir, in the passbook, credit means going up. Okay, sir. Now what is the starting point? My starting point is cash book. Normally I would have added, but this is overdraft balance, so I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to deduct 80,000 rupees. So I will say less amount credited by the bank as an error, 80,000 rupees deduct. Last one, sir, check issued not presented 53,04,000. Where is this transaction recorded, cash book or passbook? You have issued the check, you have already recorded in cash book. Does the balance go up or does the balance go down? You have issued a check, balance goes down. What is the starting point? Cash book. Normally add overdraft balance, therefore deduct. So sir, I can say checks issued not presented 53,04,000. So now I have recorded all the items, sir, either in adjusted cash book or in bank reconciliation statement. My total additions come up to 52,56,000. My total deductions come to 53,84,000. Therefore, mathematically, if you calculate, you get 44,968 plus 52,56,000 minus 53,84,000. You get minus 83,032. Sir, we started with a positive balance and we got a negative balance. So what are we going to do? We're going to change the favorability. I started with an unfavorable balance. So now what am I going to have? I'm going to have favorable balance. Which is favorable balance as per passbook? I started with cash book balance, so I'm going to arrive at passbook balance. Now, which is favorable balance as per passbook? Credit balance. So did we reach 83,032 credit balance? Yes, sir. Sir, an alternative presentation could be like this. Many of you do present like this, which is correct, sir. You will start with negative 44,968. We are starting with a negative balance. So what do I do now? I am going to add 53,84,000. I am going to deduct 52,56,000. Sir, I go as my thought process. I don't do the opposite. If my thought says add, I am going to add. Why? Because in the starting I have written a negative amount. Then what do I arrive at? I arrive at positive 83,032. Again, sir, I have started with a negative amount. I have reached a positive amount. I change the favorability. So any of the two presentations will be accepted in the exam, sir. Alternatively, I could also start from 83,032 and reach 44,968. All the amounts have been given to you in the exam, so you will know whether your answer is matching or not. Adjusted cash book, very important concept, sir. Bank reconciliation statement has been asked very often, or rather constantly, in every exam. The concept of adjusted cash book has not been asked, so it could come in any of the near exams. Coming to question 3. Mr. Devender of Dehradun sent on 16 February 2020 a consignment of 500 pen drives to Mr. Satinder of Bengal costing rupees 100 each. Expenses of rupees 750 were met by the consigner. So let me write down the data as we are discussing the question. The cost price is rupees 100 each, and I have sent how many units? 500 units. Mr. Devender has sent 500 units. Okay, sir. Expenses of rupees 750 were met by the consigner. So my consigner expenses is equal to 750 rupees. Satinder spent rupees 1,500 for clearance and selling expenses were rupees 20 per pen drive. The consignee expenses have come up to rupees 1,500 plus 20 rupees per pen drive sold. So I'm going to say per unit sold we have 20 rupees. Satinder sold on 15th March 300 pen drives at rupees 160 each. My sales is equal to 300 pen drives at 160 rupees each. And again on 20th May, 150 pen drives at 170 rupees each. Again, he is selling 150 pen drives at 170 rupees each. Okay, sir. So totally 450 pen drives have been sold at different prices. Satinder is entitled to commission of rupees 25 per pen drive plus 1/4 of the amount by which gross sale proceeds less total commission thereon exceed a sum calculated at rupees 125 per pen drive sold. We need to calculate what is this commission, sir. They've given us a very long statement for commission. So we will calculate what is the commission payable to the consignee. Satinder paid the amount due to the vendor on 30th September. You are required to prepare consignment account and Satinder account in the books of the vendor. Okay. Now, if I want to see how does my consignment account look, consignment account is similar to your trading account, where on the debit side you record all your expenses. On the credit side, we record our sales and our closing stock. Tell me what are the items that I'm going to record in my consignment account. I will record first of all two GSOC, which is 2 goods sent on consignment. What is the value of goods sent? Tell me. It is going to be 500 units into 100 rupees each. Next, on the debit side, I am going to record consignor expenses. So I will say 2 bank account. Consignor expenses in this particular case is only 750 rupees. Next, I will record 2 consignee. What do I record under 2 consignee? I will have all the expenses. I will have his commission. I could have bad debts if Del Credere commission is not paid. Okay. Now, what is his expenses, sir? His expenses is going to be, let me calculate over here, 1,500 for clearing charges plus 20 rupees into 450 units which are sold. I have sold 450 units, 300 units at 160 rupees and 150 units at 170 rupees. So total I have sold 450 units, 450 into 20 rupees plus 1,500 giving a total of 10,500 is nothing but consignee expenses. This is 10,500. Commission has to be calculated. I will calculate as a part of working note. What do we record on the credit side? On the credit side, I'm going to have first of all sales. So I will say by consignee, the sales that he has made. What is the value? What is the total value of sales? He has sold 300 units at 160 rupees each and 150 units at 170 rupees each. So your total sales comes up to 73,500. And then what else do I record on the credit side? I'm going to record closing stock. So I will say buy closing stock, which I am going to value as per working note number 2. Now in this particular question, these are the 2 working notes which have to be calculated. Apart from that, everything is simple. Let us see, sir. So for working note number 1, calculation of commission, let me see what they are saying. I'm going to say let commission be X. We do not know the value of commission, so I'm saying let commission be X. They say Satinder is entitled to commission of rupees 25 per pen drive sold. So can I say his commission is going to be X is equal to 25 into 450. 450 is the total pen drives which have been sold. 300 plus 150 at 2 different prices. Okay. Plus 1/4 of the amount, plus 1/4 of some amount. 1/4 of what amount we are looking to? Plus 1/4 of some amount. So 1/4 into what? Gross sale proceeds less total commission. Okay, sir. What is my gross sale proceeds? The total sale proceeds of 73,500 less total commission. My total commission is X. Exceeds the sum calculated at rupees 125 per unit. This particular sum that I have got, how much does it exceed the sum calculated at 125 per unit? So 125 into 450 units which have been sold. 125 into 450. Now again repeating in the equation whatever the question is saying, sir, my commission is equal to 25 per unit plus 1/4 of gross sale proceeds less total commission exceeds the sum calculated at 125 per unit. I hope you get the equation now. If I solve this particular equation, I am going to get the answer. What about closing stock, sir? Working note number 2. Closing stock. When I am calculating closing stock, tell me what are the elements involved. I'm going to have, first of all, cost of goods sold. Next, I'm going to have consignor expenses proportionately. And 3, I'm going to have non-recurring consignee expenses. What do you mean by non-recurring consignee expenses? Expenses incurred by the consignee till the goods reach the godown of the consignee. Okay, sir. Now, first of all, let me see how many units are remaining. I have sent 500 units. I have sold 450 units. So can I say 50 units are remaining? We are trying to find out the value of these 50 units. What is the cost, sir? It is going to be 50 into 100 rupees each, which is coming up to 5,000. Consignor expenses. My total consignor expenses were 750 rupees, which was for 1,500 units. Sorry, it was for 500 units, right? 500 units sent. So 750 rupees was for 500 units. I need to take the valuation for 50 units, which is going to be 75. Consignees non-recurring expenses are only clearing charges. The selling expenses are after the goods reach the godown of the consignee. So I'm going to take only 1,500. That is again for 500 units. So how much for 50 units? 150 rupees. Now this is going to be your valuation of closing stock. Let us look into the suggested answer. So in the suggested answer, we have in the books of Devender consignment account. On the debit side, I'm going to have 2 GSOC 50,000, 2 bank account consignor expenses 750, 2 expenses 10,500, the total expense of the consignee, commission calculated as per working note number 1. The same equation I will show you in the working note. On the credit side, I'm going to record sales. There were 2 categories or 2 dates of sales at 2 different prices, both recorded. Again, consignment stock as per working note number 2. Let us look into the working notes. First one, calculation of commission. Let the total commission be C. I have taken X as a variable. You could take any variable, sir. C is equal to 400 into 25, 25 rupees per unit plus 1/4 of the sum by which gross sale proceeds less total commission exceeds the sum calculated at 125 per unit. If we calculate for value of C, we get it as 12,450 rupees. 12,450 taken as the value of commission, sir. And then now let us do the valuation of closing stock. How many units are left with me? I have sent 500 units and I have sold 450 units. So how many units are remaining? It is going to be 50 units. What is the valuation of these 50 units? Cost 100 rupees each. Consignor's proportionate expenses 75. Consignee's proportionate expenses 150. The calculation similar to what we have done. 5,225 comes as your closing stock. Now, once I record these two items, sir, the balancing figure is nothing but my profit or loss on consignment. Okay, sir. In the consignee account, what am I supposed to record? In the consignee account, I record amount payable by consignee, amount payable to consignee. So he has made a sale and he is going to pay 48,000 and 25,500 to Mr. Devender. But Mr. Devender also has to pay him 10,500 towards his expenses and 12,450 as per working note number 1 for his commission. And the balancing figure of 50,550 rupees has been paid off, they say, on 30th September. If this amount has not been paid, you can take it as balance carried down. Simple question on consignment. The only tricky part was deriving this particular equation. Let us come to question number 3B. Hari accepted the following bills drawn by Vinny. On 8th March, 12,000 for 4 months. On 16th March, 15,000 for 3 months. On 7th April, 18,000 for 5 months. On 17th May, 15,000 for 3 months. He wants to pay the bills on a single day. Sir, when I want to pay multiple payments on a single day, what am I supposed to calculate? I'm supposed to calculate something called as average due date. Average due date is a day when multiple payments can be made on that particular single day without any loss to either of the parties. So they are saying find out this date, and then they say interest is to be charged at 9% per annum, and Hari wants to save rupees 471 by way of interest. Calculate the date on which he has to effect the payment to save an amount of 471 rupees. Now, on the average due date, what is going to happen? He is supposed to pay the total amount which is due on for all the multiple payments. Yes, he could pay before the average due date. He could pay after the average due date. If he is going to pay before the average due date, he is going to save some money in the form of discount at the given rate of interest. If he pays after the average due date, he is going to pay additional amount at the given rate of interest. Now he wants to save 471 rupees. So they're asking you to calculate on what date he's going to make the payment. First, let us calculate average due date. For calculating average due date, there are few certain columns that I need to have in my solution. What are those columns? Average due date is first of all equal to base date plus total product divided by total amount. So to calculate this total product, total amount, base date, we need for some particular columns, sir. Now what are the columns that I'm going to have? I will have due date, I will have amount, I will have number of days from base date, and I'm going to have the product. In this particular question, they've not given us the due date, they've given us the date of bill of exchange. So I will also have the date of bill of exchange, after which I'm going to calculate my due date. Okay, sir. Now, how do we calculate these particular items, sir? First of all, date of bill of exchange will be given in the question. Date of bill of exchange is given in the question. How do I calculate my due date? This date of bill of exchange plus term of the bill plus 3 grace days is equal to due date. Amount directly given in the question, sir. Number of days from base date. First of all, what is my base date, sir? You are going to see all your due dates. You are going to see all the due dates given to you, and your earliest due date will be identified as base date. So you take number of days from that particular date and you calculate and give it in this particular column, sir. and then product is equal to amount into number of days. Okay, now having this particular knowledge, let me see what is the answer, sir. First of all, the bills have been drawn for 4, 3, 5 and 3 months. So solution to question 3b, like I said, you are going to have these columns: the transaction date, which is nothing but your date of bill of exchange; due date, which you will calculate; amount given to you; number of days from base date; and then product. Okay, sir. The terms of the bills are 4, 3, 5 and 3. First bill is for 4, 3, 5 and 3 months. Sir, if my bill is for 4 months, which I have drawn on 8th March, when is going to be the due date? The due date, can I say it is going to be 8th March, April, May, June, July? Can I say 8th July? No, sir. I need to add 3 days grace as per the Negotiable Instruments Act. So 8th July plus 3 days grace comes to 11th July, sir. Next, 16th March plus 3 months. 16th March, April, May, June. Can I say 16 June? No. 16 June plus 3 days, 19 June. 7th April plus 5 months plus 3 days comes to 10th September. 17th April plus 3 months plus 3 days comes to 20th August. Now, what is my base date? Please do not automatically take your first due date as your base date. Look into all your due dates and take your chronologically first one as your base date. If you look into all these dates, 19th June comes chronologically first. So 19th June is going to be my base date. Amount directly given in the question. Now let us calculate number of days from the base date up to this particular due date. In case number 1, it is number of days from 19th June up to 11th July. So can I say in June there are how many days? It is going to be June 30 minus 19 plus July 11 days. So 30 minus 19 plus 11 comes up to 22. Second one, 19 June to 19 June is 0 days. Third one, 19 June to 10 September. So I'm going to have star 1 over here. Star 1. 19 June to 10 September. June is equal to 30 minus 19 plus July 31 plus August 31 plus September 10. Does it come up to 83? 30 minus 19 plus 31 plus 31 plus 10. It is coming up to 83. Yes, sir. And the last one, 19th June up to 20th August. So 19th June is 30 minus 19 plus July 31 plus August 20, coming up to 62 days. Now what do I do? This number of days will be multiplied with the amount. In the first one, it is 12,000 into 22. In the second one, 15,000 into 0, 18,000 into 83, 15,000 into 62. I get the total product, I get the total amount. Average due date is equal to base date plus total product divided by total amount. Therefore, it is equal to 19th June plus 26,88,000 divided by 60,000. That is equal to 19th June plus 45 days, which comes up to 3rd August. Now, is Hari making the payment on 3rd August? No, he wants to save 471 rupees by interest. Let us find out. Can I say he has to pay before 3rd August? Yes, but how many days before? We do not know, sir. But we know that interest is equal to amount into rate into time. So can I say my interest in this case is 471 rupees, the amount that he wants to save. The amount of the total bills is 60,000 rupees as calculated in the total amount column. So 471 is equal to 60,000 into a rate of 9% into time, which I don't know. Let me say D divided by 365. If you solve this particular equation, you get D is equal to 32 days. Sir, this is a particular leap year, so we are going to take 366. Otherwise, you would have taken 365 in the equation. Now, 32 days means what? He's supposed to pay 32 days before the average due date. My average due date calculated is 3rd August. 32 days before comes up to 2nd July. If Hari wants to pay 471 rupees less, he is supposed to make a payment on 2nd July. How much payment will he make? 60,000 minus 471. He will make a payment of 59,529. 59,529 will have to be paid on this particular 2nd July. But if he makes a payment on 3rd August, he will pay 60,000 rupees. Okay, sir. Coming to question 3C. A firm sends goods on sale or return basis to customers. Customers having the choice of returning the goods within 1 month. During October 2020, the following are the details of goods sent. So you have the date of goods sent, the customer to whom they are sent, and the value of the goods. Okay. Within the stipulated time, Mr. U and Mr. W returned the goods. So Mr. U and Mr. W are returning the goods. Okay, sir. Then they go ahead to say Mr. Y, X and Mr. V, X and Y signified that they have accepted the goods. Mr. V, Mr. X and Mr. Y have accepted the goods. Okay, sir. What about Mr. Z? I have sent the goods to him on 27th October. He is having 1 month time to accept or reject the goods. Okay, sir. Show in the books of the firm the sale or return account and customer W for sale or return account as on 15th November. Now tell me, as on 15th November, does this Mr. Z still have time? Yes, 27th I have sent the goods. He's having 1 month time. So it is way more than 15th November. As on 15th November, what am I going to say? I will have total number of goods sent or total value of goods sent to all these people. Out of that, U and W have rejected the goods, V, X and Y have accepted the goods, and Mr. Z's goods is still balanced with the customer. Okay, let me look into the account. Also, they have asked me to prepare customer W account. Customer W has accepted or rejected, so there will be no any balance. I have sent him the goods. He has either accepted or rejected. So in W account, I will have no balance. Let me look into the suggested answers. Like I said, sale or return account, sir. First of all, by debtors, you are going to have the total value of goods sent 71,500. Then we are going to record accepted by Mr. V, X and Y, the total value of 22,500. Rejected by Mr. W and U, right? U and W. Yes, U and W have rejected, so that 28,000 will be taken as returns and Mr. Z's value will be shown as balance carried down. Why am I showing it as balance carried down? Because still the time period for acceptance or rejection has not expired. Suppose the time had expired, you would have automatically assumed that the goods have been sold. Okay, sir. What about W account? Like I told you, first we have sent the goods, then he has accepted the goods, sir. So 18,000 on both the sides. There's going to be no any balance in the account of W. Simple question, sir. Coming to question 4A. Alpha and beta are partners in a firm, sharing profits and losses in the ratio 3:2. The balance sheet of Alpha and Beta as on 1st January 2021 was as follows. In the balance sheet liability side, we have the capital of Alpha and Beta. We have sundry creditors, bills payable, and bank overdraft. On the asset side, we are having building, furniture, stock in trade, debtors less provision, investment, and cash balance. Simple balance sheet, nothing complicated. Gamma was admitted to the firm on the following terms. So there is admission of a new partner, Gamma here. He is admitted for 1/6 share in future profits and to introduce a capital of 50,000. Gamma's share is 1/6. His capital introduction is going to be 50,000 rupees. The new profit sharing ratio of Alpha, Beta, Gamma is going to be 3:2:1. So NPSR is given to you 3:1 and the capital of Mr. Gamma is given to you as 50,000. Gamma is unable to bring in cash for his share of goodwill. Partners therefore decide to raise goodwill account in the books of the firm. First, we are going to raise goodwill in the books of the firm. They further decide to calculate goodwill based on Gamma's share in profits and the capital contribution made by him to the firm. Later, the goodwill was written off among the partners in their new profit sharing ratio. So first we are going to raise goodwill based on Gamma's profit to his capital contribution, and then we are going to write off the goodwill in the new profit sharing ratio. Furniture is to be written down by 1740. So this point number 4 is talking about revaluation of assets and liabilities. Value of furniture goes down by 1740. Stock is to be depreciated by 10%. So stock again goes down by how much? The given value of stock is 42,800. So can I say it is going to go down by 4,280? Next, a provision is required for debtors at 5% for bad debts. So we are supposed to make a provision for bad debts at 5% on debtors. The value of debtors you can see on top is 70,000. 70,000 into 5% comes to 3,500. Out of the 3,500, 400 provision is already existing. So I need to create a provision for the amount of 3,100. 3,500 minus 400 rupees. Next, a provision would also be made for outstanding wages for 3120. Outstanding wages is equal to 3120. The value of building having been appreciated is to be brought up to 58,400. The new value of building is equal to 58,400. What is the value in the balance sheet? We have 52,000. So can I say there is an increase of 6,400? Yes, building is increasing by 6,400. And then they say the value of investment is to be increased by 900 rupees. So these are our revaluation of assets and liabilities, sir. How do we record revaluation of assets and liabilities? Let us just have a quick recap. Revaluation account. If there is an increase in fixed asset, what will we do, sir? Increase in fixed asset, the fixed asset will be debited and your revaluation account will be credited. So I'm going to say by increase in asset. What if there is an increase in liability? The liability is going to be credited, revaluation account will be debited. So I'm going to say to increase in liability. What if they are decreasing, sir? Decrease in asset. Asset will be credited, revaluation account will be debited. So I will say to decrease in assets. And if there is a decrease in liability, the liability is going to be debited, revaluation account will be credited. So by decrease in liability. We will apply these 4 points for point number 4 dealing with revaluation of assets and liabilities. Point number 5 also says that it is found that creditors include a sum of 2,800 which is not to be paid off. So your creditors are again reducing by 2,800. Point number 4 and 5 talk about revaluation of assets and liabilities. Prepare the following: revaluation account, partners capital account, balance sheet of the new firm after the admission of Gamma. Coming to the solution, do we need any working notes? Yes, we need to calculate goodwill. We can see that Gamma's share of profit is 1/6 and his capital is 50,000. The capital of Alpha and Beta is given to be 88,000 and 72,000 respectively. Chalo, let us have the calculation of goodwill. Now I'm going to say Gamma's share of profit is equal to 1/6, whereas Gamma's capital in the firm is equal to rupees 50,000. Now, if this is the scenario, what should be the expected capital of the firm? Total capital of the firm is expected to be 50,000 into 6, which is equal to 3 lakh rupees. But what is the actual capital of the firm? If I look into the firm, the actual capital is equal to 72,000 plus 88,000, right? Yeah, 88,000 for Mr. Alpha plus 72,000 for Mr. Gamma plus 50,000 of our, 88,000 for Alpha, 72,000 for Beta and 50,000 for Gamma. So what is this actual capital coming up to? It is coming up to 2,10,000. Now the actual capital of the firm is coming up to 2,10,000, but the expected capital is 3 lakh. So can I say the difference is goodwill? Yes, 3 lakh minus 2,10,000. 90,000 is the value of your goodwill. This 90,000 will be first raised in the books of accounts in your old profit sharing ratio, and then you're going to write off the goodwill in your new profit sharing ratio as asked in the question. Chalo, let us go ahead to prepare the necessary accounts as asked. Is there any other working note? No. Everything is quite simple and given to us. Let us go ahead to prepare the revaluation account. In the revaluation account, on the debit side, what do I record, sir? On the debit side, I'm going to record decrease in assets and increase in liabilities. And on the credit side, what do I record? On the credit side, I record decrease in liabilities and increase in assets. Now, like we have analyzed in the question, what are the assets that are decreasing? Furniture, stock, and I need to create a provision on debtors. So furniture, they have directly given to you the value of 1740. Stock is reducing by 10%. So I'm going to say 42,800 into 10%. Provision for bad debts is to be created by 5%, sir. So my debtors are 70,000, I think. Yes, sir. So 70,000 into 5%, sir. That value comes up to 3,500. But there is already an existing provision of 400 rupees. So minus 400. Now I need to create a provision of 3,100. I've recorded the reduction in assets, furniture, stock, and debtors. Two of my assets are increasing, sir. Building, which is 58,400 new value minus 52,000 the given value. 6,400 is the increase. Investments, they've directly told you 900 is the increase. Revaluation of assets done. What is the revaluation of liabilities? I need to record outstanding wages of rupees 3,120 recorded on the debit side. And one creditor I am not supposed to pay. So there is a reduction on the creditors. I'm recording on the credit side. Now I have done the revaluation of assets and liabilities. What is the balancing figure? The balancing figure is my revaluation profit or loss. Who is going to take this revaluation of profit or loss? It is going to go to your old partners in their old profit sharing ratio. Whatever assets and liabilities are there in the firm till date belongs to the old partners. So the revaluation of assets and liabilities will be shared between the old partners in their old profit sharing ratio. Now, coming to prepare your partner's capital account. To start your partner's capital account, always remember to bring down the opening balance on the credit side unless given as a negative figure, which would come on the debit side. If it is a current account, it could have a negative figure. Otherwise, normally capital accounts have a credit balance. So the balance given to you for alpha and beta is 88,000 and 72,000 directly coming down. Mr. Gamma brings in cash of 50,000 rupees. So I've recorded that on the credit side. Next, what were our adjustments pertaining to? Our adjustments in capital account were pertaining to revaluation loss, and we had something to do. We had to do something for goodwill. My revaluation loss directly coming in from the revaluation account, 1,284 for alpha and 856 for beta. What have they told us about goodwill? Goodwill of 90,000 will first be raised in the books of accounts in my old profit sharing ratio, and then I'm going to write off the goodwill in the new profit sharing ratio. So now if I need to raise goodwill, can I say goodwill will be debited? The journal entry is going to be goodwill to partners capital. Yes, sir. So that I have recorded on the credit side of partners capital account, 90,000 between the old partners alpha and beta in their profit sharing ratio. And then I need to write off the goodwill. When I need to write off the goodwill, can I say goodwill will be credited? Then what will be debit? Partners capital to goodwill account. Recording that on the debit side of partners capital account, sir. Now this will be done in your new profit sharing ratio. So 45,000 alpha, 30,000 beta, 15,000 or to gamma. We have recorded all the adjustments. What is the balancing figure? The balancing figure is nothing but my closing balance of capital, which is going to come down in my balance sheet. So for alpha, I have a closing balance of 95,716. For beta, it is 77,144. And for gamma, it is 35,000 as per our partner's capital account prepared. The remaining balance sheet items will be recorded, sir. Sundry creditors, the given value minus one creditor, which I did not have to pay. Bills payable, given value 8,200. Bank overdraft, given value 18,000. I need to record an additional outstanding wage of 3,120 rupees. Okay, sir. Building, revalued amount 58,400. Furniture, revalued amount 9,860. Stock and trade, revalued amount at 90%, 38,520. Debtors 70,000 less 5% provision of 3,500. 400 rupees provision was already existing. I created a provision of 3,100. So my total provision now is 3,500. My net debtors comes to 66,500. Investment revalued amount 5,900. Cash account given balance plus the amount brought in by Mr. Gamma 50,000. Total balance of 81,000. Therefore, your balance sheet totals at 260,180. 2,60,180. Anything else they've given to me? Valuation of goodwill, the same thing that we have done, which is also called as hidden goodwill. Simple question. I hope you all are able to follow. Coming to question 4b, Mr. Surya runs a factory which produces detergents. Following details were available in respect of his manufacturing activities for the year ended 31st March 2021. So they've given you a few details. You are required to prepare manufacturing account of Mr. Surya for the year ended 31st March 2021. Yes, sir. Now, what is this particular manufacturing account, sir? Sir, when we are preparing final accounts of a business entity, we prepare trading account, profit and loss account, and balance sheet. But if it is a manufacturing concern, now what is a manufacturing concern? A manufacturing concern is one which purchases raw material, produces the finished product, and then sells the finished product. So if I'm not a manufacturing concern, what do? I'm only trading. I buy the finished product, sell the finished product. But now manufacturing concerns buys raw material, produces the product, and then sells the finished product. So in addition to trading, profit and loss account and balance sheet, we also prepare manufacturing account. How does this manufacturing account look? If I am preparing manufacturing account, I'm going to start with opening stock. Will I record all the opening stock here? No, only opening stock of work in progress and raw material is going to come in the manufacturing account. What about finished goods? Finished goods is going to come into your trading account itself. Okay, sir. So in my manufacturing account, what am I going to have? I'm going to first have two opening stock of work in progress. On the credit side, I will have buy closing stock of work in progress. Next, sir, I'm going to have two opening stock of raw material. But sir, instead of presenting closing stock of raw material on the credit side, we present it on the debit side itself as a negative figure. So on the debit side itself, I'm going to present this as a negative figure, sir. And then what else am I going to have? I could have your purchases of raw material, and I could have any other expenses related to manufacturing. Now, sir, why do we present this on the credit side as a negative figure, sir? Because your opening stock of raw material plus purchases of raw material minus closing stock of raw material shows you what is your raw material consumed. It is giving you your consumption. That is the reason we present it on the credit side. We can calculate what is my consumption in this case. Okay, now let me come back to this question and see the information given to me. So like I said, they've given you the opening stock of work in progress and raw material. They've given you purchases of raw material. They've given you wages, which is 80 paisa per unit manufactured and 40 paisa per unit of closing WIP. Hiring charges of the factory is equal to 7,80,000, and for the machinery it is 70 paisa per unit manufactured. Repairs and maintenance 5,40,000. Units produced, very important, 15 lakh units. Now, why is this 15 lakh very important, sir? We need to calculate your expenses. Your wages is related to number of units manufactured. Your hire charges of the machinery is related to number of units manufactured. So that is nothing but your 15 lakh units. Now coming to the answer. Manufacturing account for the year ended 31st March 2021. On the debit side, like I told you, we start with the opening work in progress 78,000, and on the credit side I'm giving the closing work in progress 1,44,000. One point to note, sir, in your manufacturing account you maintain an additional column of units as well. So I've maintained the number of units also. Okay, raw material, like I told you, sir, opening stock debit side, purchases debit side, and closing stock shown as a negative figure, and this is going to give you your raw material consumed, which is 22,80,000. Wages calculation, let us calculate, sir, star 1 on top over there. Now what does the wages say in the question? They are saying wages is 80 paisa per unit manufactured plus 40 paisa per unit of closing WIP. 80 paisa into 15 lakh plus 40 paisa into closing WIP. How many closing units of WIP I'm having? 42,000 units. So I'm going to say my wages is going to be 80 paisa into 15 lakh plus 40 paisa into 42,000 units, which comes up to this 12,16,800. Okay, sir. What about hiring charges, sir? Hiring charges of machinery, star 2. I'm writing below over there, sir. What have they told me in the question? They tell me hiring charges is equal to zero point 0.7 per unit manufactured, in green color marked. Hiring charges is equal to 0.7 per unit manufactured. So what will I say? It is going to be 0.7 into 15 lakhs, which is equal to 10,50,000. Hiring charges of the factory directly given to you 7,80,000. Repairs and maintenance 5,40,000. Assuming that it is repairs and maintenance connected to manufacturing, repairs of a particular machinery. Okay, sir. In the manufacturing account, like I told you, you do not arrive at profit, but you are going to arrive at cost of finished goods, which is going to be finally transferred to your trading account. This is your balancing figure, sir. Under the units column, we have number of units 15 lakh and the total cost is 58 lakh 1,800. Simple question, sir. Coming to question 5A. From the following information supplied by New Punjabi Wakla, prepare receipts and payments account and income and expenditure account for the year ended 31st March 2021. Okay, they've given us amounts at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. Outstanding subscription, advance subscription, outstanding salary, cash in hand, cash at bank, 10% investments, furniture, machinery, and sports goods. Subscription for the year amounted to rupees 1,50,000. Now, if they are saying subscription for the year, can I say this is the amount going to come into my income and expenditure account? This is my subscription income for the year. Okay, I will find out what is the amount actually received during the year using the table above. Next, they have said salary paid rupees 30,000. So this is the amount going to go in my receipts and payments account. Okay, I will find out what is the actual salary expense for the year from the information given above. Face value of investment was rupees 87,500. 50% of the investment was sold at 80% of the face value. They have sold investment. We need to calculate profit or loss on sale of investment. Interest on investment was received 7,000 rupees. They had told us that the interest on investment is 10%. So we need to calculate if there is any amount outstanding or prepaid. Furniture was sold for rupees 4,000 at the beginning of the year. Calculate profit or loss on sale. Machinery and sports goods purchased and put to use at the last day of the year. So there is some purchase of machinery and sports goods which is purchased at the last day of the year. Now, why do we need the date of purchase? To calculate your depreciation. Charge depreciation at 15% on machinery and sports goods and 10% per annum on furniture. Following expenses were incurred during the year. Sports expenses 25,000, rent rupees 12,000, out of which 1,000 is outstanding. Miscellaneous expenses 2,500. This is the information given to us. They've asked us to prepare receipts and payments account and income and expenditure account. Now, sir, for the additional information available, we need to prepare a few working notes because the direct amounts are not given to us. So let us step into working note number 1. What is working note number 1? We are dealing with the first item given in the additional information, which is subscription. So let us try to find out what is the subscription received during the year. They have told me subscription for the year amounted to 1,50,000. So what is my starting point? My starting point says subscription for the year is equal to rupees 1,50,000. Now this, like I told you, it is the amount going to come into your income and expenditure account. Okay, there will be few additional items that we are going to add or less depending on the question. Chalo, let us see what is the information given to us for subscription. Your first 2 points are dealing with subscription. There is outstanding subscription at the beginning and end of the year. There is advanced subscription at the beginning and end of the year. What are we supposed to do with these amounts? Let us write down in the working note. Outstanding subscription at the start of the year will be added. So I will say add outstanding subscription at the beginning of the year or at the start of the year. What is the amount? 70,000. And I am going to deduct outstanding subscription at the end of the year. The amount coming up to 1 lakh rupees. Sir, why are you adding and deducting this, sir? Sir, outstanding at the starting of the year. That means, can I say received in the current year? Yes, sir. We are trying to find out how much amount is received during the year. Okay, sir. Then outstanding subscription at the end of the year means, can I say received in the next year? Yes, sir. So therefore, I'm going to deduct the amount. Now, coming to the adjustment for advances, sir. What am I going to do? I will say add advance subscription at the end of the year. Advance subscription at the end of the year, amounting to how much? 15,000 rupees.
and I'm going to say less advance subscription at the start of the year. The amount being rupees 12,500. Sir, why do you do this particular add or less, sir? Because advance subscription at the end of the year, that means it is pertaining to next year, but I have received in the current year. Again, I'm telling this working note is calculating your receipts. And then advance subscription at the start of the year means it is received in the previous year. So I am trying to find out whatever is received in the current year, those will be added. Whichever is not received in the current year will be deducted. It might have been received in the next year or in the previous year. Okay, sir. If we calculate mathematically, 1,50,000 plus 70,000 minus 1 lakh plus 15,000 minus 12,500 gives me a salary received, or sorry, subscription received during the year for rupees 1,22,500. 1,22,500. Okay, sir. Coming to the next working note. Now, if I look into the question, what does the next statement deal with? I'm just coming to the question. My next statement says salary paid rupees 30,000. Now, salary paid during the year is 30,000, but what is the actual salary expense during the year? Is there any other item given for salary? Yes, there is some outstanding salary. Okay, chalo, now let us try to calculate as per working note 2. So I'm going to say working note 2. Calculation of salary expense for the year. Now, what is the starting point in this case? We have salary paid during the year. I have the amount of salary actually paid during the year. Which has been given as rupees 30,000. And like I said, we have outstanding salary details. So tell me what will we do? Now I'm going to say add outstanding salary at the end or at the beginning? At the end of the year. And I will say less outstanding salary at the start of the year. The amounts being rupees 9,000 and 7,500 respectively. 9,000, 7,500. Okay, sir. So what do you get? You get your salary expense for the year amounting to rupees 31,500. Now you might ask me, why did we do this particular adjustment of add or less? Sir, outstanding salary at the end of the year has been added. Why, sir? Because this salary pertains to current year. It is outstanding at the end of the year. That means, can I say it pertains to the current year itself? Yes, sir. And outstanding salary at the starting of the year. That means, can I say it pertains to last year? That is why it was outstanding at the end of last year. Yes, sir. So pertains to last year. What are we trying to find out? We are trying to find out the expense for the year. If it pertains to current year, I'm going to add. If it does not belong to current year, I'm going to deduct. Therefore, the salary expense for the year comes up to 31,500. Now, let us come to the third working note. The third working note says face value of the investment was rupees 87,500. 50% of the investment was sold at 80% of face value. Working note 3, calculation of profit or loss on investment. Tell me, what is the face value of the total investment? Face value of the total investment is given to be 87,500. But am I selling the complete investment? No, I'm selling only 50%. So what is 50% face value? Which is equal to 87,500 into 0.5, coming up to 43,750. Have I sold it at 43,750? No, they go ahead to say the selling price is 80% of the face value. So now, what is the selling price? of investment sold? It is going to be 80% of the face value. So 43,750 into 0.8. How much does that come up to? It comes up to 35,000 rupees. Okay, sir. Now, let me see what is the cost of my investment. Where is the cost of my investment given to me? You look into the table. If you look into the table, what is the value of investment given to you? They tell you the value of investment is equal to 70,000. At the beginning of the year, it is equal to 70,000. Here you can see 10% investment equal to 70,000, because you have sold 50,000. At the end of the year, it becomes 35,000. So can I say the cost of the investment which I have sold is 35,000? Yes, sir. So now I am writing down there cost of the investment equal to 35,000. My selling price also equal to 35,000. My cost price also equal to 35,000. So what is the profit or loss, sir? There is no any profit or loss. Okay, sir. Now let us come to the next part of the discussion. So what is the next point dealing with? The next point, they say interest on investment was received for rupees 7,000. Okay, sir. So let us try to calculate whether there is any outstanding or prepaid interest. Working note number 4, calculation of income on investment. Now, again, what is the face value of the investment? Income on investment will always be received on the face value and not at your cost. So the face value of the total investment is given to be rupees 87,500. How much is the income on investment? It is giving an income of 10%. So what is 10% of the above? It is coming up to 87,500 into 10%, which when calculated comes up to 8,750. Okay, sir. What is the information given to us saying? They are saying in the year we have received an amount of 7,000. What was the amount interest or income for the year? 8,750. How much have we received during the year? 7,000. So what is the balance? 1,750. Can I say it is an amount still receivable? Yes, sir. So I'm going to say outstanding interest receivable, which is equal to 1,750. Now, why are we doing this particular calculation, sir? In my income and expenditure account, what am I going to show? I'm going to show the total income of 8,750 pertaining to the current year. But in my receipts and payments, how much will I show? I'm going to show only the amount received of 7,000 rupees. Now, let me come to the next working note. So the next sentence in the question deals with furniture. So they are saying furniture was sold for 4,000 at the beginning of the year. Okay, now let us calculate if there is any profit or loss on sale of furniture. So what is the opening value of furniture given to you? The opening value of furniture is given as 14,000 rupees. Okay, sir. And what is the closing value of furniture before depreciation? They have not yet charged your depreciation. Before depreciation, your closing value of furniture is 7,000. So now, can I know the value of furniture sold? So I can say furniture sold amounted to rupees 7,000 rupees. But at what price have I sold this furniture? The selling price I have given, or they've given me in this question, is equal to rupees 4,000. The book value of the furniture sold 7,000, selling price 4,000. So what can I conclude? Can I say there is a loss on sale of rupees 3,000? Yes, sir. Now, why are we calculating this? My selling price, the total sale proceeds will of 4,000 will be shown in your receipts and payments account, and your profit or loss on sale will be shown in your income and expenditure account. Okay, sir. Now let me come to the next point. So in the question, the next point they are saying machinery and sports goods purchased during the year were purchased on the last day of the year. Can charge depreciation at 15% per annum on machinery and sports goods and at 10% per annum on furniture. So let us come to working note number 6. Calculation of depreciation on machinery. What was my opening balance of machinery? 7,000 rupees. Although my closing, sorry, 5,000 rupees. My closing balance is not equal to 5,000. Whatever I have purchased during the year is purchased on the last day. So I will not be giving any depreciation for the machine purchase on last day. So on the opening balance, I'm giving the depreciation. The balance is equal to 5,000 and the rate of depreciation given to me is 15%. So I'm going to say 5,000 into 15 divided by 100, which comes up to how much? It comes up to 750 rupees. What about sports goods? Again, sports goods, we are going to give depreciation on my opening balance. Why? The purchases during the year, whichever has been made on the last day of the year. So depreciation will not be given on the assets purchased at the last day of the year. So now I'm going to say 7,500 opening balance into 15%. I'm sorry for the handwriting. Just a moment. 7,500 into 15%. And how much does the value come up to? It comes up to 1,125. Okay, sir. What about furniture, sir? I have sold furniture at the beginning of the year. So can I say on the part of furniture which is sold on the first day of the year, no depreciation will be charged? Okay. What is the remaining value of furniture? 7,000 rupees. For the 7,000 worth of furniture, can I charge full year depreciation? Yes, sir. The rate of depreciation for furniture is given as 10%. So now I'm going to say 700. Okay, sir. Why are we calculating this? Because my total depreciation is going to come into my income and expenditure account. So what is the total depreciation? 700 plus 1125 plus 750 coming up to 2,575. 2,575, your total depreciation will be shown in your income and expenditure account. We have prepared all the working notes. Let us go ahead to prepare receipts and payments account and income and expenditure account. Just to give you a quick recap of what do we record in our receipts and payments account, sir. Receipts and payments account is a summary of your cash book. So you're going to start with your opening balance of cash and bank, and you're going to end with the closing balance of cash and bank. In between, on the debit side, we are going to record all receipts, and on the credit side, we are going to record all payments. Sir, do we make a bifurcation between current year, next year, or last year? No. If it is paid during the year, you record. If it is received during the year, you record. Do we make a bifurcation between capital and revenue items? No. All receipts, all payments will be recorded in your receipts and payments account. What about income and expenditure account, sir? Income and expenditure account records the expenses on the debit side and the incomes on the credit side. What types of expenses and incomes, sir? Only revenue items on accrual basis, only pertaining to the current year, and it could also record non-cash items such as depreciation. Okay, now keeping this in mind, chalo, let us prepare the receipts and payments account and income and expenditure account with the help of the working notes. So receipts and payments account, like you can see on screen, it is starting with your cash and bank balance as given to you. We have two subscriptions calculated under working note number 1. We have sale of investment. The amount of 35,000 was already given to us. We have interest on investment calculated as a part of one of the working notes. Sale of furniture, 4,000 already given to us. Salary, 30,000 was already given to us. On the payment side, I'm discussing. Sports goods, sir, 5,000. How did I get 5,000? Nothing but your closing balance minus the opening balance is the amount of purchases made during the year. Okay, sir. The same thing for machinery as well. Next, there were 3 small points given at the end of the question, which had sports expenses, rent, and miscellaneous expenses. For the particular item of rent, they have said that rupees 12,000, out of which 1,000 is outstanding. So in my receipts and payments account, on the payment side, I record only 11,000, which is 12,000 minus 1,000. Okay, sir. Next, I close with the balance carried down. Again, that is also given to you in the question. Coming to income and expenditure account, sir, like I said, on the debit side, we are going to record all our expenses. 2 salaries calculated as per part of working note number 2. 2 sports expenses. What is the sports expenses, sir? They've given us in the last part of the working note, sports expenses, rent, and miscellaneous expenses. So directly I'm taking the items pertaining to the current year, sir. Next, loss on sale of furniture. Your profit or loss only will come into your income and expenditure account, sir. We are not going to take the total amount of sale proceeds. We record only the profit or loss, which was again calculated as part of one of your working notes. Okay, sir. Depreciation calculated as part of one of the working notes. I told you, you do not see only cash items. You take whether it is a cash or a non-cash expenditure in your income and expenditure account. On the credit side, we are recording subscription of the year, sir, and income on investments. Total of 8,750, whatever total amount was pertaining to the current year. Okay, sir. The balancing figure is going to be your surplus or deficit. Coming to question 5B, following information is provided by Messrs. Ritu Manufacturers for the year ended 31st December 2020. In the end, they are saying you are required to pass necessary closing entries in the journal proper of Mrs. Ritu Manufacturers. Now, what is this journal proper? Journal proper is a subsidiary book where we record all the transactions which do not appear in any of the other subsidiary books. So this is an example for such a transaction, which could be your closing entries. Okay, sir. The information given to us has opening inventory, purchases, carriage inwards, wages, sales, return inward, return outward, closing stock. You can see that all these items are shown in your trading account. So what is the journal entry that we are going to pass? We are going to record all these items in my trading account. Sir, what is this return inward? What is return outward, sir? Return inward is nothing but sales returns, which will be transferred to sales. Return outward is nothing but purchase returns, which will be transferred to purchases. And then your net amount of sales and purchases will come into your trading account. So first, what do we do? My sales returns will be deducted from sales. My purchase returns will be deducted from purchases. And then the net amounts will be transferred to my trading account. Let me look into the solution. Like I told you, solution to 5B, journal entries in the books of Mrs. MS Ritu Manufacturers. First, we have return outwards account debtor, which is nothing but purchase returns. To purchases account, I have credited my purchases. Why, sir? Because my purchases is reducing. Reduction in expense will be credited. Okay, sir. Next entry, return outwards. Return outwards is nothing but dealing with sales returns, sir. Sales returns has been debited by reduction in income. It is going to be debited. Okay, sir. Purchase returns, sales returns transferred to the respective accounts. Now, what am I going to do, sir? I'm going to transfer the other items to trading account. On the credit side of trading account, what do we show, sir? We show sales. So I will say sales account debtor to trading account. Next, on the debit side, what do I show? I show my purchases and direct expenses along with closing stock. So I will say trading account debtor, to purchases, to carriage inwards, to wages, to opening inventory. I have given a compound entry. You could give individual entries as well. Like if you see on the credit side, we have given sales separately, and then below they have given closing stock separately. So you could either give a compound entry or you could give individual entries. Again, closing stock coming on the credit side. So I've said closing stock account debtor to trading account. Once we record our trading account, what do we arrive at? We arrive at profit. So I take that gross profit from the trading account and transfer it to profit and loss account. When I'm taking the profit from trading account, my gross profit is going to be credited. Why, sir? Nominal account. Credit all incomes and gains. Profits are credited, sir. So first I will record trading account data to gross profit. Now I bring that down to my profit and loss account. I transfer the gross profit to profit and loss account. So I'm going to say gross profit account data to profit and loss account. Simple question. These were the entries to close the accounts or close the books of Ritu Manufacturers. Coming to the last question, question number 6A. Daniel Limited invited applications for issuing 1 lakh equity shares of rupees 20 each. The amount were payable as follows. On application rupees 6, on allotment rupees 10, and on first and final call rupees 4. Okay, sir. Applications were received for 1,50,000 shares and pro rata allotment was made to all the applications. Money overpaid on application was adjusted towards allotment money. X, who was allotted 3,000 shares, failed to pay the first and final call money. His shares were forfeited. Out of the forfeited shares, 2,500 shares were reissued as fully paid up at rupees 16 each. Pass necessary journal entries to record the above transactions in the books of Daniel Limited. Okay, coming to a few basic questions. What is the face value of the share? The face value per share is rupees 20. What is the issue price of the share? I see that they have collected 6 rupees in the application stage, 10 rupees in the allotment stage, and 4 rupees in the first and final call. So that comes up to a total of 20 rupees. Issue price equal to face value. So I'm saying issue of shares at par. Now, what is the journal entries that we are supposed to record? Entry number 1 will be for receiving the application money. Entry number 2, transferring application money to share capital. Entry number 3, allotment money due. Entry number 4, receiving allotment money. Entry number 5, first and final call money due. Entry number 6, receiving first and final call money. If you have more calls, you will record more entries. Next, they have forfeited the shares, so we will record an entry for share forfeiture. They've reissued the shares, we will record an entry for reissue. And then finally, any amount remaining in share forfeiture account will be transferred to capital reserve. Chalo, let us look into the solution to this question. Solution to question 6a, journal entries in the books of Daniel Limited. My first entry is to be recording my application money received, bank account data to share application account. How much, sir? I have received 1,50,000 applications into 6 rupees each. So I will record 9 lakh rupees as bank account data to share application. My second journal entry, transfer of share application money to share capital account. So how much money will I transfer? Share application account debtor 9 lakh rupees. But should I transfer entire 9 lakh rupees to share capital? No, I have not issued 1,50,000 shares. I have issued how much? Only 1 lakh shares. So 1 lakh into 6 rupees will be transferred to share capital, and then the balance 3 lakh will be transferred to share allotment. Why, sir? Because they say any advance received in the application stage will be adjusted towards allotment. Next entry, sir, allotment money due, share allotment account data to share capital account. How much money, sir? It is 1 lakh shares into 10 rupees each. So 10 lakh is the money due. Am I going to receive the entire 10 lakhs? No, sir. 3 rupees had been given at the application stage itself in advance. So now I'm going to receive 1 lakh shares into 7 rupees. Bank account data to share allotment account 7 lakh, 7 lakh. Next, sir, first and final call money due. Here we have only one stage of call. So I'm saying share first and final call account data to share capital account. How much is the amount? It is going to be 1 lakh shares into 4 rupees each, which gives a value of 4 lakh. Now, am I receiving the entire money? No, sir. Mr. X holding 3,000 shares does not pay, sir. So I will say 97,000 shares into 4 rupees each has been paid, and calls in arrears will be recorded for 3,000 shares into 4 rupees each. So bank account data 3,88,000, calls in arrears account data 12,000, to share first and final call 4 lakh rupees. Okay, sir. Now this is my issue of shares. After this, they are saying that the 3,000 shares of Mr. X have been forfeited on non-payment of first and final call money. So how do we record forfeiture of shares, sir? Share capital account will be debited with the amount called up. Forfeited shares will be credited with the amount received, and then you will record your calls in arrears for the amount not received. So now, how many shares am I forfeiting? I'm forfeiting, I think, 3,000 shares, right? Yes, sir. So I'm going to say share capital account debtor 3,000 into 20 rupees. These shares are fully called up, so the entire 20 rupees will be taken. You need to be careful. If your call money has not yet been called, you will not take that in your debit. Share capital will be debited only with the amount called up by the company. Next, share forfeiture account or forfeited shares account will be credited, sir, with what value? 3,000 shares into the amount received. Now I have not received first and final call money of 4 rupees per share. So can I say the amount received is 16 rupees? Yes, sir. And then I'm going to credit calls in arrears 3,000 shares into 4 rupees each. My journal entry for share forfeiture, share capital account debtor 60,000, to forfeited shares account 48,000, to calls in arrears 12,000. Okay, sir. After this, out of the 3,000 shares which are forfeited, 2,500 shares have been reissued. At what price, sir? They have been reissued fully paid up at rupees 16 each. So I'm going to receive only 16 rupees each, but they are considered fully paid up. Okay, sir. So what is the journal entry that I'm going to pass? First of all, bank account debtor 2,500 shares into 16 rupees each. Next, you credit your capital account 2,500 shares into 20 rupees each, and the balancing figure 4 rupees will be used from your forfeited shares or share forfeiture account. So 2,500 into 4 rupees. Now what is the journal entry? Bank account debtor 40,000, forfeited shares account debtor 10,000, to share capital account 50,000. Okay, sir. Now, after the reissue of shares, any balance in share forfeiture should be transferred to capital reserve account.
How much was the amount forfeited per share? You can see 16 rupees marked in red. How much did I use for reissue? I've used 4 rupees. So can I say there is still some balance remaining? Yes, sir. So how much will I transfer, sir? The entry being forfeited shares account debtor to capital reserve account. It will be only to the extent of 2,500 shares because this entry comes after your reissue. 500 shares have not yet been reissued, so you will not pass this transfer entry for that. To the extent of 2,500 shares we are passing, sir. Into what amount? Sir, amount forfeited 16, amount used for reissue 4 rupees. So 25,000, sorry, 2,500 into 12 rupees, which is 30,000, will be transferred from forfeited shares to capital reserve. This completes your question number 6A. Okay, sir, let us go to question 6B. On 1st January 2020, Pigeon Limited issued 12% debentures of face value of rupees 40 lakh at 10% discount. Debenture interest after deducting tax at source at 10% was payable on 30th June and 31st December every year. All the debentures were to be redeemed after the expiry after the 5-year period after the expiry of a 5-year period at 5% premium. Pass necessary journal entries for the accounting year 2020. Okay, sir. Now, what are the journal entries I'm supposed to record? I'm supposed to record journal entries for issue of debentures. These debentures have been issued at 10% discount and they are redeemable at 5% premium. Along with this, in the accounting year 2020, I also have interest on debentures, which is half yearly on 30th June and 31st December, and this interest is subject to 10% TDS. Okay, chalo, let us look into the solution. Solution to question 6B, journal entries in the books of Pigeon Limited. My first entry is to record my issue of debentures. The value of debentures issued is 40 lakh at a 10% at a 10% discount. So how much will I receive? My bank account will be debited with 40 lakhs minus 10%, which is nothing but 36 lakh. And then 12% debentures will be credited with the amount of face value of debentures, which is 40 lakh. Relating to this debentures, what is my discount or loss on issue of debentures? I am having both discount on issue and premium on redemption. My discount on issue at 10% comes up to 4 lakh rupees, which is 40 lakh into 10%, and my premium comes up to 2 lakh rupees, which is 40 lakh into 5%. So total loss is how much? 6 lakh. Now this 6 lakh is going to be debited in discount on issue of debentures account. And then I'm creating a redemption premium or a liability at the time of redemption for the amount of 2 lakhs. Okay, sir. This is my journal entry for issue of debentures. Bank account debtor 36 lakh. Discount on issue of debentures account 6 lakh, in which 4 lakh is the discount, 2 lakh is the premium on redemption. 12% debentures account face value 40 lakhs. 2 debenture redemption premium account 2 lakh. Next, sir, I need to record a half yearly interest on these debentures. These debentures are 12% debentures, sir. So how much is my half yearly interest? I'm going to say 40 lakhs into 12% into 6 by 12. So that is the amount of debenture interest, which is 4,80,000. Out of this 4,80,000, 10% goes towards TDS and the 90% goes towards my debenture holder. TDS will be payable to the government of India. Okay, sir. Now, what is the journal entry I'm going to record? Debenture interest account debtor. I'm debiting debenture interest because it is an expense to the company. To debenture holder account 4,32,000, which is 90% of 4,80,000. To TDS payable 48,000, which is 10% of 4,80,000. This is the entry for the TDS due. And then when I make a payment, I record debenture holder account debtor, TDS payable account debtor to bank account. Okay, sir. Such similar entries will also be made on 31st December as well because it is a half yearly interest. Again, same thing, sir. 40 lakh into 12% into 6 by 12 is your total interest, 4,80,000. 90% payable to the debenture holder, which is 4,32,000. 10% payable to TDS, payable to Government of India in the form of TDS. So just giving you those calculations, it is nothing but 4,80,000 into 90% and 4,80,000 into 10%. How did we get 4,80,000 visible on top over there? 40 lakh into 12% into 6 by 12. Okay, sir. Now these are all the entries recorded for the year, sir. At the end of the year, all your nominal accounts are transferred to profit and loss account. Now, if you look into the journal entries, which are all my nominal accounts involved, I have one, debenture interest, and I have the second one, discount on issue of debentures. My debenture interest is how much? 4,80,000, 4,80,000 twice a year. Discount on issue of debentures is 6 lakh rupees. Should I put the entire 6 lakh into the profit and loss account? No, sir. The life of these debentures is 5 years. So that 6 lakh will be split over a 5-year period. How much do we record, sir? You can see the last journal entry. Profit and loss account debtor, because these are expenses. So profit and loss account will be debited to debenture interest account. 4,80,000 into 2. 4,80,000 into 2. 4,80,000 paid twice a year. To discount on issue of debentures, 1,20,000, which is nothing but 6 lakh divided by a 5-year period. Every year you are going to take 1,20,000 into your profit and loss account. Do not forget to transfer nominal accounts to the profit and loss account at the end of the year. Simple question. Coming to the last question, question 6C, a theory question. Write short notes on any two of the following. We will discuss all the four. First one, double entry system. Now, what do you mean by double entry system? Each transaction is going to have two aspects, debit and credit. Your debit amount should be equal to the credit amount. This particular system was developed by Luca Pacioli. Because of this double entry system, we have the accounting equation of assets is equal to liabilities plus capital. So all these things can be written in your short notes. Importance of bank reconciliation statement to an industrial unit. What do you mean by importance of bank reconciliation statement? Why do we prepare a bank reconciliation statement? What could be the objectives of preparing a bank reconciliation statement? Okay, sir. One, it makes us equate our cash book to the bank passbook. Second, I can know the actual position of the bank because my cash book might be showing some position, but the bank might actually have a different balance. Point number three, check clearance delays might be shown, like you have issued a check to someone, but they have not presented it for payment. You have deposited a check, it has not been cleared. So if there are any delays in the checks, you are going to get to see it. Then you can see any errors which have been committed in your cash book or in your passbook. Then we could know if there is any embezzlement or theft done by the cashier. So these could be some of the points for which bank reconciliation statement is being prepared. Let us just see the answers what they have given us. So first one, like I said, double entry system may be defined as the system which recognizes and records two aspects of every transaction. Every transaction has two aspects according to this system. This system was developed in the 15th century by Luca Pacioli. It is proved to be systematic and has been found to be of great use for recording financial affairs of all institutions requiring the use of money. You could also add on, sir, asset is equal to liability plus capital. The equation, accounting equation, is derived because of the double entry system. Okay, sir. The second question dealing with the importance of a particular bank reconciliation statement. Like I told you, you can get to know the liquidity position on a particular date, your actual bank balance on a particular date, or you can get to know checks which have not been presented for payment. You can get to know checks which have not been collected or credited so far. You can get to know if there are any bills dishonored and the money was gone from your bank account. Then you could get to know errors committed by the bank or by the accountant. Then we can get to know if there is any embezzlement by the cashier. So these were a few reasons for importance of preparing your bank reconciliation statement. Next, question 3, under the 6C category, question 3, bills of exchange and the various parties involved. What is a bill of exchange, sir? A bill of exchange is an instrument in writing containing an unconditional order directing a certain sum, directing a certain person to pay a certain sum of money only to or to the order of or to the bearer of the instrument. So let me just highlight the important points. First of all, it is an instrument in writing. It contains an unconditional order. There cannot be any condition attached, signed by the maker directing a certain sum, a certain person. You need to say that this person, you have to name the person. You cannot just give an unknown person. Certain sum of money, the amount also should be specific. I have to say rupees 100, rupees 1000. I cannot say rupees 1000 plus interest. Now, plus interest is not certain. The amount has to be certain. Whom am I going to pay to? Only to, or to the order of, or to the bearer of the instrument. So I pay to the person who has drawn the bill, or on the order of the person to a certain person, or to the bearer holder of the instrument. Who are the parties involved? The drawer, the person who makes the bill of exchange; the drawee, the person who accepts for the bill of exchange; and the payee, the person to whom the amount is supposed to be paid. In most cases, you can see that the drawer and payee will be the same person. Okay, sir. Coming to the last one, retirement of bills of exchange. Now, what do you mean by retirement of bills of exchange? Retirement means we are making a payment before the maturity date. Okay, sir. Let us look into the question, or let us look into the answer. Sometimes the acceptor of a bill of exchange has extra funds before maturity. He therefore may desire to pay the bill before the due date. In such a case, the acceptor shall ask the payee to accept payment before the maturity date. If the payee agrees, the acceptor may be allowed a rebate or discount for such repayment. He is paying early, so he may get a discount for such early prompt payment. This rebate, I'm sorry, this is not debate. This particular thing should be rebate. This rebate is generally the interest at an agreed rate for the time period between date of payment and date of maturity. The day of early payment up to the date of maturity at the given rate of interest. This interest becomes an income for whom? Income for the acceptor, because the acceptor is going to pay lesser amount, and an expense for the payee because the payee is going to receive lesser amount. It is a consideration for the premature payment, that is for your early payment. So with this, we complete our entire discussion on mock test paper 1 and mock test paper 2 for the June 2021 Foundation Accounts exam. I hope these videos have been beneficial for you. Please do share them with anyone who could make use of them. Till the exams, stay focused, stay safe, keep studying. Thank you.